Deconverted Man here. There is a fundamental issue that I have to address before I do this video. The issue is attacking the person, the ad hominem attack. That if this person is a jerk, that somehow that might mean that their argument is invalid. It doesn't. And what's interesting to note is you can call someone a jerk and not have it be an ad hominem, unless you're saying that because they are a jerk, therefore their argument is invalid. It's not an ad hominem. But it is something that you don't need to do. You don't need to include that personal attack in your argumentation. It doesn't help your argument. So it's something that you should leave to the side. This individual is saying things that are irritating, that are offensive, that make him seem like a jerk. But that isn't what matters. What matters is, does he present us with an argument, and is that argument logically valid? And if not, then we should be skeptical of it, and if he doesn't present us with an argument, then we just have to dismiss what he says. That's what matters. Always attack the arguments, not the person. And so, with that in mind, brace yourself for this abrasive person as I analyze the video, Why Atheists Are Like Toddlers.
One of the things I've come to realize about atheists is that atheists, in a way, are mentally handicapped.
You better have an awful lot of research to back up this statement. It's really irritating because there really are mentally handicapped people out there and they need help. Not always, but they do. And I think that we should treat them fairly and equally as possible, and we shouldn't look down on them and we shouldn't insult them. So to say that somebody, some group, is mentally handicapped, you better have a ton of psychological papers to back up such an assertion. If you don't, it's a failure to give an argumentation, and it's an outright lie.
One of the things that defines the human race is that there's a spiritual aspect to our existence.
Where's the research for this? Where's the papers? Where's the publications? Where's anything to substantiate your claim that this is unique to humans? And what would be then the explanation about it being in animals at all? It's just nothing there. You offer us nothing to go on. If you want to say humans have more pronounced spirituality than animals, okay, you could support that. But again, you would need to offer the documentations for your argument to be established. You could put those in the description box at the very least. You could link to at least one article, if nothing else. It wouldn't be enough really to back up your claim, since it's a pretty big claim that you're making, but it would be something. But you don't have that. You don't offer that. So again, failure to give an argumentation, and because you've said something that's not true, an outright lie.
So, for example, we don't see animals going around, worshiping or doing some sort of rituals.
And this is based on what studies again? Oh, that's right. You didn't do any research, did you? You don't have any studies that you're basing your words off of. See, I am going to provide links to studies of animals. I am going to do that research and have it for the listeners if they want to click on it. It will be in the description box below. You have nothing at all. You have, friend me, like me, Facebook me, stuff like that under your video. Maybe things about, atheists are, like toddlers and we're ridiculous or whatever, something like that. But you don't have any research. So it's a failure to give an argumentation again. And it's not true, so it's another outright lie.
Now, the problem with atheists is that they did not develop the spiritual sense that people of a religious background naturally have.
Okay, so once again, failure to give an argumentation because he has no psychological papers to prove. This is also an attempt to poison the well, because if we can say that they don't have this, then and they've never developed this, then this somehow makes their position weaker than yours. Okay, so here's the thing. You said this whole thing that's made up, that atheists haven't developed this thing that religious people have. Okay, how do you know that? Of course, based on what? Based on your own ideas, I guess. But do you have to develop this? Is it taught by somebody else? Or is it something that people just naturally develop? In which case, if it was something that people just naturally develop on their own, then psychological studies could show that that was the case. That without any external stimuli placed upon individual X, Y, and Z, that, 80% of the time individual X, Y, and Z had become religious on their own. But we don't see that. What we do see is that usually people from a religious background tend to be religious for that particular religion. And people from a non-religious background tend to not be religious. Which is not surprising considering that you form ideas about the world based upon the environment you're in. We also do see that people will become religious more likely based on the religion that's dominant in that society. So here in America, more Christians than any other religion because it's the more dominant religion. If you go to our Arab country, it will be Muslim because that's everywhere. If you go to India, it will be Hinduism. And so you will see people develop towards a religion that's already established, where everybody is already that. There will be, of course, those rare occasions when you have somebody from a religious background who turns out non-religious in the end. But there's no study included here. There's nothing here. He has no psychological papers. He has no studies. He has nothing for us to go on. So this is a non-argument. Just said as if it is true, hoping that you don't think about it, and that's it. That's it. That's all he's giving us. Just so it's logical fallacies, but it's a continuation of a non-argument. Give me your argument.
And you can see this when atheists always argue that, well, the only way to know things is through science, is through your senses.
What a bizarre straw man this is. So the straw man is that all atheists rely on empiricism, that we all always make the argument towards empiricism, that you have to rely on your senses in conjunction with science. That is what empiricism is, after all. Okay, that's not always true. Many atheists don't rely upon empiricism. I don't. I think empiricism is great, and it's a wonderful way to figure out if something is real or not. But it's not my only tool, in my case. But there might be some, sure. And even if it was true that every atheist was using empiricism, that doesn't mean anything. Animals don't use science. Animals may or may not use their senses in the way that we do, and to link humans and animals is kind of a non sequitur anyways, because humans are animals. It's just we're animals with a consciousness that the other animals may or may not have. At least they don't have it to the degree that we do. We can do things that they can't. They can do things we can't, but we can do things regarding our environment that they can't. So we're unique in that sense. And hey, that's actually supported by evidence, unlike everything you're saying here, which has nothing that it's supported on. But nonetheless, this is a very bizarre straw man. It's like, oh, you guys just use science, and, those animals just use science. Well, wait a minute. I mean, no, you use the senses, and animals use their senses, so you're like them, see? What about the science part? Oh no, see, so it's just one comparison. So, hey, somebody has a mustache and Hitler has a mustache. So we're just going to have that one comparison and link them together. Hey, spiky hair guy has 2 eyeballs and Hitler has 2 eyeballs. So spiky hair guy is like Hitler. Ooh, I can do it too. It's stupid. It's not a way to make an argumentation. So, no, you're wrong because of all that, and also, again, a logical fallacy with the straw man. Moving on.
Well, that's a very animalistic thing to say, because animals experience the world through their senses, but humans have this different dimension where they can feel things spiritually. And so it's very much explaining a spiritual relationship or a belief in God to an atheist is very much like talking to a toddler.
This false analogy to tie atheists to toddlers based on one common theme between the two. Toddlers are hard to talk to about calculus. Atheists are hard to talk to about spiritual things. So therefore, it's hard to talk to them. So it's like talking to a toddler. It's just one thing that's like, it's hard to talk to you, so it's like talking to a toddler. It's such a weak analogy. It's such a false analogy that I have to really question why one would use it, especially when spiky hair guy is trying, I guess, to make a video not to the atheists, obviously, but to other Christians to say, be more compassionate towards atheists. Yet, he is not being compassionate towards atheists by saying that they're like toddlers. That's not very compassionate. Then the analogy completely breaks up when he asserts that it's a mental handicap, that it's due to some inability in the brain of atheists to ever understand or experience this phenomenon. So it's not like talking to a toddler after all. It would be like talking to somebody with a mental deficiency, if his later assertion is true, which it isn't, because he doesn't back it up. I mean, it might be true, but he doesn't present us with any reason to think that it's true, so we have nothing to go on. But his own assertion crumbles under his own assertion. Oops! Wow, you really didn't think this through, did you? You just made a video that insults atheists as you're trying to say, don't insult atheists. I think the appropriate term would be train wreck.
And atheism is exactly the same way. They think if you can't touch something, if you can't hear something, then you can't know something.
So now the new straw man is that atheists only use their 5 senses. Before it was atheists only use empiricism, but now atheists only use their 5 senses, and now we have a false analogy that makes them animalistic because animals use only their 5 senses. So wouldn't the conclusion that follows that be therefore atheists are animalistic, not therefore atheists are like talking to toddlers, or therefore atheists have a mental deficiency? I mean, that would follow. It would still be invalid because the premises are invalid, but it would actually follow. So how does your idea, even if we were to ignore the straw man and false analogy, work? It doesn't. So also non sequitur, and still you haven't given us an actual argument to base anything on.
And that's a developmental problem. I was listening to a debate between Blair Scott and Kyle Butt, and Blair Scott's a pretty prominent atheist, but he admitted that atheism is more common amongst people that have a certain defect in the brain. They had actually confirmed this with study.
So one guy saying that there is a study that says something is not an argumentation. I don't care how famous this guy is. His fame is an appeal to novelty. Does he have the qualifications to talk about this paper? Is he a doctor in that profession? If not, then it is an appeal to the wrong authority. If he is, it might be an appeal to authority that's valid rather than invalid. We don't have the debate that he said this in. We do not have that study. You did not provide us a link to that study. And by failing to do so, you have once again failed to give us an argumentation.
And so, a lot of times I argue with atheists. I think these people are just, sort of, stubborn, or they just don't. But I think there's a deeper issue, which I think a lot of them might be mentally handicapped. They might not understand or not be able to grasp or feel what normal religious human beings can feel.
Well, this is a tough decision for me. Stubborn versus mentally handicapped. I guess I'll have to go with stubborn. I can actually, in my case, experience these feelings, but I don't think that they're supernatural. I think that they're natural. I can experience wonder like I did when I was a Christian, at least subjectively speaking. It might be a different feeling that I'm feeling, and since there's no way to measure my feelings against each other and it's all completely subjective, I have no way to really quantify any of that. But yeah, given the choice of those two ideas, I guess I'd rather be stubborn. But again, this is nothing more than a false dichotomy. It's a straw man, it's a poisoning the well, it's a potential ad hominem rather than an actual one, because you're not really saying that because they are mentally handicapped, therefore their arguments are invalid. I think it's suggested there, but I can't really for sure say that that's the case here. Wow, so how many is that? 14 logical fallacies and 7 formal ones. And every single formal fallacy was a failure of you giving an argumentation. You had 7 times that you could have done that, and you failed every single time. Which means normally we have an argument that's invalid, and then we have to be skeptical of the conclusions. We have reasons to be skeptical of the conclusions because we do have logical fallacies. But in this case, we have no argument. So we have to dismiss your idea completely. And unless and until you produce an argumentation, we get to continue to dismiss your ideas. Logically invalid, even if it was the case that atheists only used empiricism, even